My name is Avery Hart. On paper, I'm 24 years old, 5'7", assigned to a long-range reconnaissance support detachment with the kind of resume commanders pretend doesn't exist. The paperwork says marksman, overwatch, precision interdiction. The real word is simpler: sniper. I didn't become one because I loved the idea of distance, or because it felt powerful. I became one because distance is sometimes the only mercy you can offer your own people. You remove the threat before it reaches them. You stop the nightmare before it becomes close enough to have a face. That was the theory. Then the call came in, and the theory stopped matching. It happened in Kestrel Province, a place that looked like green beauty from above and like a wet grave from the ground. Jungle foothills climbed into broken ridges. Rivers cut through dense canopy. Villages sat in pockets of cleared land like they were hiding from the world. And somewhere inside that thick, living maze, Echo Squad got hit. Echo wasn't supposed to be there long, just a reconnaissance sweep and a civilian escort out of a contested valley. Their mission name was Silent Ladder. Evac a local engineer and his family, confirm an enemy relay site, and get back to the forward line before night. No hero stories. Then the radio call turned into a scream. Contact. Contact. We're pinned. Static. Ambush from the tree line. Multiple shooters. More static. Then a voice I recognized. Staff Sergeant Mason Klein, Echo Squad leader. Calm even while dying. Need overwatch. Need it now. We're cut off. Then the transmission cut completely. No more chatter. No more shots. Just silence. Silence is what happens right before people disappear. I was in a cramped operations room when the silence hit, watching a map with too many red marks. The colonel didn't look at me when he spoke, like if he met my eyes he'd have to admit what he was asking. Hart, he said, Echo Squad is compromised. I already knew. They were escorting civilians. If they're overrun, those civilians are dead. If the enemy gets the engineer, they get access codes for the hydro grid. Hydro grid. That river-fed system kept hospitals, shelters, and our own forward base alive. Lose it, and you don't just lose electricity. You lose order. He finally looked at me. You're our best shot. It wasn't a compliment. It was a sentence. A helicopter insertion was impossible. Too much anti-air. A vehicle convoy would be too slow. The only option was what commanders chose when they had nothing else. Send one person who could move fast and kill precisely. They gave me a route, a time window, and one additional piece of information that made my stomach tighten. Echo Squad was being tracked, the intel officer said. We suspect a leak. A leak meant the ambush wasn't luck. It was arranged. I checked my rifle, suppressed, calibrated, the scope glass clean enough to reflect my own eyes back at me. I checked my ammo. I checked my camo wrap. I checked my breathing. Because when you're about to walk into an ambush that already swallowed a squad, you don't rely on courage. You rely on habits. The jungle swallowed me the moment I crossed the last friendly marker. Humidity pressed against my skin like wet hands. Every leaf dripped. Every branch wanted to grab my gear. The air smelled like mud and rot, and something faintly metallic. Old water, old blood, old war. I moved alone. Not because I wanted to. Because solo meant silent. I followed a shallow riverbed, using the water's noise to hide my steps. I tested ground with a stick. Tripwires loved places like this. You didn't see them until you were already screaming. After an hour I stopped, climbed a thick root system, and listened. Nothing. Then, faintly, a sound that didn't belong. A single shot, far away, muffled, followed by two more. Not random, not panicked. Signal shots. Controlled. Echo Squad wasn't dead yet. I moved faster. 2 kilometers later, I found the first sign. A torn strip of fabric caught on a thorn bush, stained dark. Nearby, boot prints churned the mud. Not just one direction, circling. Hurting. They'd funneled Echo into a kill pocket. I crawled up a ridge and saw the valley below, dense foliage broken by a narrow clearing that looked too clean to be natural. The kind of place an enemy would choose if they wanted you trapped. And in that clearing, I saw it. The ambush site. Smoke drifted low, not thick enough to hide bodies, just enough to blur shapes. Echo's position was behind a fallen log line and a cluster of boulders. Their formation was fractured. I could see at least 3 soldiers moving, low, exhausted, firing in short bursts. And the civilians, huddled under a tarp near the rocks, barely visible. Enemy positions surrounded them. High branches, ridgeline dips, a concealed path along the left. They weren't trying to wipe Echo quickly. They were trying to capture. I found my firing lane and settled prone, rifle steady on a mossy stone. My breathing slowed. The world narrowed to scope glass. I started picking targets. First, the spotter in the tree who was feeding corrections. His posture gave him away, head tilted, hand signals. I exhaled. 1 shot. He dropped without a sound. Second, the heavy weapon on the right flank, an automatic rifle set to keep Echo pinned. I waited for the gunner to lean in. 1 shot. The weapon fell silent. Down below, Echo shifted. Mason Klein took the chance, dragging 1 wounded soldier behind cover. Good. But then the enemy did something that made my skin turn cold. They didn't panic. They didn't retreat. They smoked the clearing. Fast, tactical smoke, thick and controlled. They were blinding Echo. And they were blinding me. Someone down there understood Overwatch. Someone anticipated me. I changed position immediately, crawling backward into shadow. Smoke in the clearing meant the next move wasn't about bullets. It was about proximity. They were going to rush Echo under cover of smoke and grab the civilians. I needed angles. I moved along the ridge, found a higher perch, and watched the smoke spread like a living thing. Then I saw 3 figures moving through it. Low, fast, disciplined. Not militia. Professionals. The lead figure wore a comms headset. He wasn't shooting. He was directing. A controller. I tracked him. I could have taken the shot. But something stopped me. His movements were familiar. Too familiar. The slight tilt of his head. The hand gestures. The way he checked corners. I had seen it before, on our side. My throat tightened. A leak wasn't just information. A leak was a person. I held my fire, waited 1 more second for confirmation. The controller stepped into a patch of clearer air, and for a fraction of a second his face turned toward the light. He wore no mask, and I recognized him. Captain Jonah Mercer. He was supposed to be at our forward base. He was supposed to be the one coordinating support. He was supposed to be one of us. My mind tried to reject it, but my eyes didn't lie. Mercer raised his hand, signaling the rush team, and Echo Squad's position started to collapse. I didn't have time to process betrayal. I had time to act. I adjusted my aim and fired. Not at Mercer, not yet, but at the men moving with him. The first dropped. The second stumbled. The third dove behind a log. Echo's soldiers fired blindly into the smoke, desperation in every burst. Mason Klein yelled something I couldn't hear. His men shifted, forming a tighter ring around the civilians. I needed Echo to know they weren't alone. I clicked my mic twice, short pulse, into the emergency channel that sometimes carried through the canopy. Static answered. Then a faint voice. Hart. It was Mason, strained. Is that you? It's me, I whispered. Hold your position. Do not push. We're bleeding out, he rasped. Civilians are terrified. They're pushing smoke. I see it, I said. Listen to me. I'm going to open a corridor on your west side. When I say move, you move. A pause. Then, Roger. I scanned west side. There was a narrow strip of jungle that led to a ravine, low ground, hidden by brush. If Echo could reach it, they could disappear. But the enemy knew that too. They had a team positioned there, 2 shooters and a man with a drone controller. I started clearing them. 1 shot. Second shot. The drone controller flinched, tried to duck. Third shot. He dropped, and the drone fell from the sky like a wounded insect. The west corridor opened for maybe 15 seconds. Mason, I said, voice sharp. Move. Now, Echo Squad surged, carrying wounded, dragging civilians, moving like people who finally felt hope. Then Mercer reacted. He shouted orders, and enemy fire shifted toward the west corridor. They weren't shooting to kill. They were shooting to herd. Mercer wanted them alive. Why? Because he wanted the engineer. Because he wanted the hydro codes. Because he wanted something bigger than a squad. Echo reached the ravine. I saw Mason glance upward, scanning, searching for me like he could somehow spot a ghost. Then enemy fire cracked from the ridge across from mine. 2 shots, clean, precise. A counter-sniper. I rolled off my position just as bark exploded where my head had been. They'd triangulated me. Mercer didn't just bring an ambush. He brought someone who could hunt me. I crawled downhill, heart pounding. I could hear bullets snapping through leaves. I moved fast but quiet, a contradiction that took every bit of training I had. Then I felt it. A slight tug on my boot. I froze. Tripwire. So thin it was practically imagination. I didn't move. Not even a breath. I reached down with 2 fingers, traced the line, found the anchor. It wasn't connected to an explosive. It was connected to a flare. A signal flare tied to a bell. A marker. If I triggered it, Mercer would know exactly where I was. I cut it carefully. Then I heard footsteps approaching, close. Too close. Someone was sweeping the ridge. I lay flat in mud, letting the jungle swallow me. Boots passed within 6 feet. A voice muttered, low and confident. Sniper's still out here. Mercer's voice. He was hunting me personally. That meant he wasn't confident anymore. Good. I repositioned again, moving wide to flank the clearing from a new angle. My hands trembled from adrenaline, but the rifle steadied when it mattered. I needed answers. Why was Mercer here? Who was he working for? And what was his final objective? Then I saw something that didn't match the ambush. A black case being carried by 2 enemy operators. Heavy, handled carefully. They were moving it toward the hydro facility intake line. Not the engineer. Not civilians. A device. A sabotage unit. Mercer wasn't just stealing codes. He was about to weaponize the river system, either flood release or contamination. Echo Squad had escaped the kill pocket, but the mission wasn't over. If Mercer triggered that device, everyone downstream, villages, hospitals, our base, would suffer. This wasn't a tactical betrayal. This was strategic. This was mass casualty by infrastructure. My pulse hammered. I locked onto the case carriers. 1 shot. The first man dropped. 2nd shot. The second stumbled, the case crashing into mud. Mercer spun, shouting. The counter-sniper fired at me again, another close miss. They had my approximate location. I had seconds. I shifted aim and did the thing I had avoided. I put my crosshair on Mercer. He was moving, body angled, using cover. He was good, but everyone makes a mistake when they're angry. He stepped into open space for half a heartbeat, just enough to see his face clearly. I fired. The shot struck his shoulder, spinning him down. Not fatal. Intentional. If Mercer died, the enemy might still trigger the device. If Mercer lived, he might talk. He clutched his shoulder, grimacing, furious. And then, unexpectedly, he laughed. He looked directly toward my ridge and shouted something that cut through the jungle like a knife. You think this ends here, Hart? You're already too late. My stomach dropped. Too late for what? A low hum rose from the hydro facility. Not a generator. A countdown tone, electronic, steady. The black case in the mud was active. It had a failsafe. If the carriers were killed, it would trigger anyway. Mercer had planned for betrayal on top of betrayal. I had one option. Get to the case and disable it. But that meant leaving Overwatch, leaving safety, stepping into the open. A sniper stepping into the fight up close is like a surgeon throwing away his hands. But if I didn't, people would die. I moved. I sprinted downhill through brush, heart slamming, breath burning. Bullets snapped overhead. Leaves exploded around me. I slid behind a broken concrete wall near the hydrostructure. The countdown tone was louder now. I peeked. The case blinked red. A small display counted down, less than a minute. I pulled out my multi-tool, hands fast despite the fear. Then a shadow fell over me. I looked up and saw the counter-sniper. He stood above, rifle trained on me. He wasn't wearing enemy colors. He wore neutral gear, no markings. His eyes were cold. He spoke in English. "Drop it." I didn't move. He stepped closer. "That device goes off," he said calmly, "and your entire command structure collapses in the chaos. That's the point." "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "A correction." And then he raised his rifle. I thought I was dead. Then a shot cracked from the ravine. The counter-sniper's head snapped to the side, and he collapsed. Mason Klein. From the ravine, wounded and exhausted. Mason had taken a rifle and fired the one shot he had left, saving me the way I'd saved them. "Move, Hart," he yelled. "We're with you." My throat tightened. I forced my hands to work. 15 seconds. I ripped open the case panel. Wires. Too many. Color-coded. A trap. I remembered Mercer's laugh. Too late. Then I saw it. One wire different from the rest. A thin fiber line running to a pressure switch. I cut it. The countdown tone stopped instantly. Silence. For a heartbeat, the jungle held its breath. Then the case light went green. Disarmed. I exhaled so hard it hurt. Mercer was being dragged away by his men, retreating into the jungle. Echo Squad regrouped, civilians still alive, wounded still breathing. But Mercer wasn't finished. He shouted back, voice echoing. "You saved them today, but you don't know what you stopped." I watched him vanish into green shadows. He was right about one thing. This wasn't the end. This was a chapter. We extracted with civilians, with wounded, and with a story command would pretend never happened. Back at base, the colonel stared at Mercer's file in disbelief. "Captain Mercer is listed as present here all night," he said. "Security logs confirm." Maya from comms shook her head. Then the one in the jungle wasn't Mercer. A chill ran down my spine, because I had looked into his face, or at least what I thought was his face. A perfect impersonation, a decoy, and that meant the real Mercer might still be here, inside our base, watching us react. The leak wasn't over. It was evolving. That night, I sat alone with my rifle across my knees, listening to the base generator hum, thinking about how close the river came to becoming a weapon. Mason approached quietly. He sat beside me without speaking for a while. Then he said, voice low, "You saved my squad." I swallowed. "You saved me too." He nodded. "What now?" I stared into the dark. "Now," I said, "we find out who's wearing our faces." If you enjoy realistic military stories, subscribe to Epic Recon Stories.